Hello.
Hello, mate. How are you?
I'm doing well. Welcome to Canada.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I love this studio you've got here.
Thank you.
It's like we're in a sort of an old dying nightclub. Doesn't it? It's like,
it's like a really sad nightclub.
it's beautiful though. It feels like this room's got memories in it. Stuff's gone down here.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I should come into big thumping house music. Yeah. How was the show last night?
Yeah, it was good fun actually. Yeah, it was really cool. Doing a little place in I think the Comedy Bar in Toronto.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was ace. Just a little tiny venue, like 100 people, nice and sweaty. Turns out sellotape isn't the thing you have over here.
Cellar tape.
Yeah, exactly. So I have this bit about you know, this sort of the stuff that you wrap presents with.
Yep.
You call it Scotch tape. Yeah. So there you go. So I was just prattling on about it. So it's good. That's the interesting thing about like chutes and ladders, snakes and ladders. It's like little tiny nuances.
Yeah.
So they're kind of looking at me like, and I was doing this thing yesterday about in England we have magpies, the black and white birds, and if you see them, you have to say, "Hello, Mr. Magpie. How's your family?" And I've got this bit that's kind of funny, observational comedy in a, hey, why do we do that? And it works really well in England. But obviously, if you don't have the bird or the saying, it's just madness. So I was trying to explain to the audience yesterday, isn't it funny that we do this? And they would just look at me and go, it's not funny, it's insane. But this is the thing we do. So yeah, it was good, really. It's just, that's what I love, just doing like a little small venue and kind of sort of chewing a set out and kind of, you know,
I find that fascinating about comedy because you'd never see Chris Martin, for example, be like, I'm going to go down and play the open mic night.
Yeah, and it stood up there and it was all blue, it was all orange, yellow, it was yellow. But that's what comedy is, that it doesn't exist in a vacuum. You have to kind of get up, you have an idea, you kind of, you know, say out loud in front of people and they help you mold it into a thing. It's such a two-way process, you know?
And I love how much comics love that.
Yeah.
They're not like, oh no, I got to go down to the Comedy Cellar in New York, for example, and try out some stuff.
You'll never find a comedian.
They love it.
Mate, yeah. I think that's the brilliant thing. It doesn't matter how big you are. Like, every time Chris Rock does London, he always does the Comedy Store before he does big shows. And I've seen him down there, and it's a similar thing. It's just him kind of, you know, sort of trying out stuff, going this way, that way, and so that when he does the big show, it's all ironed out and it's all kind of good. But I bet you he enjoys that tiny gig just as much as he enjoys doing the Hammersmith Apollo or the O2 or something.
You talked about the differences between Brits and North Americans in terms of references and stuff. What about in terms of being an audience in general?
Oh, I think they're pretty similar. I think you're a lot more upbeat than English audiences. Like, it always fascinates me when you see comics come on. I remember doing Montreal a few years ago and a guy walked on stage and went, so I've been married now for about 20 years, and the crowd applauded. That wouldn't happen in England. You know, it's just like, you've been married, have you? Well, you better have some stories about how much you hate her because we haven't come here for joy. We're English. But I really like that positivity and whooping. I've never heard an English person whoop, you know, sort of the sort of general positivity. That's what I love. But that's a
big part of your comedy, though.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I'm kind of different in England for that because I'm kind of one of the more kind of upbeat guys. But I'm nothing compared to the average North American audience. It's amazing. You kind of wander on, hey, to travel all this way and have people kind of giddy to see you. It's mind-blowing.
Is that the biggest cultural difference, you think? The cynicism versus general positivity over here? Or what are the big differences, you think?
I don't know. It's a very good question. I haven't really sort of dwelt on it. But I think on the surface level, you appear to be jollier than we are. I think we're not very good, and you're very open and you talk, whereas, you know, English people don't really chat. So it's really interesting being in bars, hearing people kind of converse and tell each other, so this happened the other day, and like I listened to a whole bunch of girls yesterday.
That's
and
a great accent.
But they're just kind of going on about this thing that happened, and then this guy came up to me, and here's what he said, and they're reading out text to each other, and then oh my God, that's so awful, and they're kind of chatting away. And you sort of think in England, it would just be, how are you, Marie? Fine. And that's all it would be. So it's kind of nice, really, that you just seem open to me. Just seem very chatty. It's just, but I think that, I don't know whether that's a Canadian. I know loads of Canadian comics, people like Craig Campbell and Tom Stade and Mike Wilmot, that are sort of natural storytellers. So I wonder whether that's part of the sort of Canadian psyche.
Culture and
psyche.
Yeah,
you just feel very kind of chatty, very kind of friendly.
Well, again, you're a storyteller yourself. Yeah. I was wondering, do you just collect anecdotes as you go through your day? Are you thinking, well, that's a good little story. That's a good little story.
Yeah, pretty much. It's kind of, I'm sort of fortunate really that it's a mechanism through which to do life stand up. Because but you must have a similar thing doing this job, that where certain things happen in your life and you're lucky enough to have sort of a creative outlet that you think, oh, that'd be quite cool, and I can put this through comedy. So, something might happen to me, and then you think, okay, and then you write a few jokes around it, and before you know, it's a nice sort of slice of something.
When did you discover you could do that?
I think I've always done it since I was a kid. Like, do you know what I mean?
But as a professional, translate life through comedy, and
Do you know? Weirdly, this is going to sound terribly pretentious, but how English did I sound then? That's another thing as well. That it's that weird thing where you try. You're sort of told when you're living in England that as soon as you get to North America, girls love an English accent. That simply isn't the case. But you find yourself trying to be more English, and it doesn't work. It's just creepy. Hello, ladies, hello.
Ladies is always creepy.
Yeah, exactly.
Singular is fine. Singular is great.
That's exactly it. Although, but lady is still pretty creepy, though, isn't it? But
it's like 80% less creepy. The plural is a problem. Sorry, but I interrupted you.
No, it's hilarious. Yeah. But that's I think what happened. I remember doing an open spot, like an open mic when I was 18. It was kind of one of those things that I really wanted to do it since I was sort of 15. I used to write jokes. In my room, didn't tell anyone about it. I thought, right, let's go for it, just once. And I did it, and it went really well. And the next day, it's a bit like when, have you ever seen an interview with a vampire, where Brad Pitt gets bitten and becomes a vampire, and suddenly the world looks different? That's how it felt to me, that suddenly you kind of went, wow, everything that happens in life, I have this playground that I can put it through, and it's incredibly exhilarating, because suddenly going to the shops to buy bread is a potential comedian. And that makes it sound like I'm sort of looking for, but there are certainly times in life where you just you're just living life in a very normal way, and then things happen, and then you go, okay, that could be a bit, and it kind of it's relatable.
Well, one thing you often mine from your life for comedy is your family.
Yes. What
is it about your family that makes you laugh so much?
I think the same as anyone, really. I just find them, I love them, and I'm baffled by them in equal measure. And I've got a very open family, very big family. So I've had loads of kind of huge family parties down the years, and I've kind of sat kind of watching these odd people. And I've just sort of, over the years, I never realised how weird they were until you go around your friend's house, and you'd kind of go, oh my God, they're all sat down eating and talking to each other over dinner. Nobody's kind of in the corner. The dog isn't eating with us, and it's increasingly, I spend a lot of time with them, because they ground you, because you're doing absurd things. If you're doing the O2 or you're doing Wembley or whatever, it's really nice to come home and just sit with your mum and have some home-cooked food with your mum and just listen to her rabbit on.
Do you have a favourite story about your mom? Funny story?
Many. Probably my favourite recently, we were in a traffic jam on a motorway, and this guy got out of his car to say hello to me, which is pretty unusual. It's like knocking on the window. He's like, can I have a photo? And I was like, yeah, fine. And my mum started screaming, help, he's kidnapped me. Which was just this brilliant moment when you go, what are you doing? And she was really going for help, I don't know who he is. And then the guy was kind of puzzled, and I just turned to Mum and said, what did you do that for? And she said, because I'm 57 and I don't care. And it was just this amazing moment,
There was one time when I was 18, it's very similar. It's so funny you tell that story. I went to McDonald's with my mom, and we got to the counter, and she suddenly pretended she couldn't speak English.
Yeah, but that's what. But there you go. So it's that. But if you've been raised by kind of joyous people, it just. I think that's it, and I think so many people are that. So many people have relationships like that where, because your mum would have known that was hilarious, and you would have known it was hilarious. But there's part of you going, "What are you doing? Why now?" And she's like, "Well, why not? It's great." What does your mum do?
Actually, she's retired, semi-retired.
Okay, what does
she lives in Rwanda now.
Okay.
Yeah, and she runs a Montessori and keeps bees.
Wow.
Generally has a good time.
Well, so, there you go.
Nice. So you mentioned O2, you mentioned Wembley. You're playing these massive venues.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about bombing.
Okay.
Is it possible to bomb in an arena like that?
I would imagine so. Yeah. Hopefully, I haven't. But that's why I spent ages and ages and ages working up stuff, so that when you get there, it's so solid that it's kind of a big monologue. But I think if you didn't do any gigs and you went straight into it, absolutely you could. You can't really improvise in those rooms. You kind of just have to come on and go, hello, here's the show, ba-da-bum-ba, you know.
Yeah.
You can't just kind of, I was in Toronto earlier and a sort of thing happened, and sort of feel your way out. You know, it very much, sorry, there's a button here that says cough. There isn't a button for burp. What is that? Does that produce a cough or does that cover the cough?
It covers the, yeah.
Does that work? Did that work?
It's the only one way to find out.
Yeah.
We'll get some comments on the internet and I'll let you know. It's fascinating to me that all comedians have bombed.
Yes.
Even the best.
Yes.
What's that like?
It's not pleasant, but it's sort of useful, really, because you kind of there's two ways. When you've got new material, it's really important because you go there and you go, huh? And the audience are like, nah. So I wouldn't describe that as sort of bombing as such. Do you know what I mean? It's just kind of like, oh, that's a shame. It doesn't quite work, but maybe with a bit of tweaking. So you'd sort of do new stuff. Probably you give it 5 goes before you go, this ain't happening. Do you know what I mean? But you sort of have to take that kind of average. And then you have other shows where it just doesn't work and it's just white hot terror. But they happen early doors, I think, when you don't know how to master a crowd, or I started when I was 18, so I would sometimes have gigs of a weekend when I was 18 years old, and I looked like I was 12. So, and huge burly blokes like, what's this? Hey, what you talking about, boy? I don't care about Craig David or what kind of week he's had. Tell me about my life. I don't know about your life. So
I love that Craig David was just referenced there.
No, but do you know what I mean? Like, but it's that kind of early sort of stuff that you end up doing. Oh, what a week that was, and these kind of taking off pop lyrics. But it's part of the process. But exactly as we were saying earlier, it doesn't exist in a vacuum. And by trying stuff, you kind of go, okay, that doesn't work, so you just don't do it again. But it's like having a conversation with your friends, and then going, and then your mate's pulling you to one side. Don't ever say that. That will never work.
So you mind your family for comedy.
Yeah.
You mind basically everything. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that you avoid?
Not really. No, it's kind of whatever's in your head, really. It's stuff that kind of tends to kind of percolate. So I'll sort of make notes, and then there's a really great, I read a beautiful story about Woody Allen. Apparently what he does is he has, whenever he has thoughts, just writes them down and he puts them in a drawer, and because he's always working, he's doing another film, but he'll have a little scrap of an idea and he puts it away. And then when he comes to work to write his next thing, he kind of gets this desk out, empties it, looks at all his notes and goes, oh yeah, here's what I've been thinking about. Oh yeah, I'll write about that. And it's kind of a similar thing that I'll just, with my iPhone or notepads, I'll just kind of jot down little notes. And then when I come to do something, you kind of go through them all and you go, oh, it's interesting. That's kind of obviously what I've been thinking about. And it's quite a nice way of kind of working. So there isn't really anything I would or wouldn't do. It's kind of whatever if there's things that I keep going back to, you think, okay, I should probably deal with that.
It's on your mind. It's weighing heavily on your mind. It's probably out there in the zeitgeist as well.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? It's just sort of, there's a little sort of niggle in the back of your head and you think, okay, yeah, maybe it's that.
You mentioned your iPhone a second ago, and The Telegraph says you chew up current affairs for the internet generation.
Yes.
What do you think about that?
I don't know.
That characterization.
I don't know. I think it's probably like linked to good news.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what we do with good news. Basically, the aim of it is just to kind of make a funny, daft show about the news that's pretty rapid fire. And that's it, really. So I've never really thought, let's hit the internet generation. It's just whoever wants to watch it.
What about political comedy? Do you have goals there as far as engaging people in politics?
Not especially. Like we just take it story by story. So if there's kind of there's been quite a big rise of sort of right-wing small political parties in England. There's a party called UKIP that have sort of garnered quite a lot of press, but very little power, and they're quite easily derided. So we've kind of done a lot of stuff about them. Like the leader, Nigel Farage, he said he was late for a meeting. He was stuck in traffic because of immigration, and one of the donors of UKIP said that women should be banned from wearing trousers because it would be the end of civilization. So what we did is we got 15 girls to come on the show with trousers on their head and trousers on their arms and did a little trouser dance. So it's always a silly, daft way of looking at kind of serious stories. That's kind of what we do, rather than anything politically sort of heavy hitting. It's just not really who I am, and I don't really have any kind of political focus other than making people laugh. That's kind of it. So I wouldn't kind of, lay off one party because I'd support one party over another,
It's the comedy first.
Yeah.
Well, when people think of politics and comedy, they think of your good friend John Oliver. What comes to mind when you think of him?
The first thing that comes to mind is playing football at my friend Al's wedding and him accidentally treading on my friend Daniel's testicles. That's the first thing that comes to mind. And us screaming, it's the nut cup. But you asked. That was the first thought. I mean, there's many other strings to John's bow, but my goodness, he can stamp on a nad.
Have you been surprised by his success?
Nah. He's kind of one of those guys. Like, we used to tour kind of universities and colleges in England. I was kind of his support act for years. And he's almost like the perfect kind of mentor. Him and my friend Daniel Kitson, who's a huge star in England, were kind of like my sort of elders, as it were. So yeah, you just, if you spend any time with John, he's hilarious and incredibly knowledgeable and just brilliant. Whatever it is, he's got it. Do you know what I mean? And you could sort of tell that very early on. So it was just, it was slightly, because he was doing well in England, and it was slightly cool that he kind of went, and it's almost like he works. I had a really interesting chat with a guy I met in LA. This guy was like, the reason John Oliver works, he's really funny, but he looks English. He looks English. He's got that kind of Mr. Bean thing going on. Whereas you look like a Californian surfer. I wouldn't think you, and it was, and I thought it's really interesting because he fits everything you want him to be. He's funny, but he's so obviously English and a bit awkward. So maybe that fits here more than it would necessarily in England. Do you know what I mean?
I want to circle back to the positivity that seems to be at the core of your comedy. What brings you the most joy?
Football. Sadly, football. The most joyous. Do you play football? Soccer.
Again, I was like, not so much. A little bit. We play in the control room there.
Well, I was chatting with one of the guys. He had his foot on a ball.
Yeah.
If you're, and this is very specific, but if you're on the halfway line, right, and you've got the ball at your feet, and the defenders are peeling away from you, and you've got your striker up front, that's the calmest you'll ever be in life, because you're so joyous because you're not thinking about anything. You're completely in the moment. That's the happiest I've ever felt. And scoring a goal at Anfield, which is Liverpool's ground, I scored a penalty there. That's the most joyous I've ever felt.
Even more than in comedy.
I'm talking about kicking football in the net at Anfield. It's off the scale. I think if I were a footballer, maybe it would be that thing of going, oh, I did a gig and it was great, but the grass is always greener. But let me tell you, because you don't think, the thing about comedy or any job, your brain is always thinking 2 steps ahead, whereas when you're playing football, you are so, it's the rare moment when you're completely you're just there. You're not thinking about anything else. You're not thinking about, oh, I've got to pay that bill, or, there's a cough button here. You're just thinking, strikers, move, bang, goal, dead, yes.
I think
John's just stamped on his balls, yes.
I think there are really only 2 things like that really pull you into the moment. One is doing something physical like that, and the other, I think, is laughing.
Yeah.
Too. That's when you're totally
That's a good shout, yeah.
Living in the moment. Thank you so much for coming in, Russell.
Pleasure.